Hello, Patsy Wagner here from the US. My border buddy Allison Sullivan from Canada and I are excited to share with you our June Take and Make kit. This month we're going to be using the Jara Flowers stamp set, the Many Mates stamp set, both new sets in the annual catalog, the Bumblebee ribbon and the Just Jade ribbon. These are two of the new in colors that are coming out this year. The in colors are good for 2 years and give us some variety and some more up-to-date colors that are more trendy and don't last as long as the traditional colors. We're going to be using our Memento ink, which we need to use with our Stampin' Blends. And in May we use Stampin' Blends. These are kind of a staple on Allison's and my stamping desk. Now you can use watercolor pencils, many other different things to color in, but this is a big preference of mine. We're going to be using the new 2020 to 2022 in color enamel dots. These are just a fun little accessory. The PDF tutorial you received includes the supply list for all the items, measurements, and step-by-step directions. The kit also includes the envelopes. So number 1 will be number 1, the first card in the directions on your PDF. So we're going to just take out our projects here, get those all set up. And for this one, we're going to add some glue. Now, the multi-purpose glue is a great glue for gluing pieces of paper together because it allows you some flexibility. So when you're positioning it, if it isn't just in the right space, you have a few minutes to, move it around. So we're going to add our designer paper to our Bumblebee cardstock, and then we're going to place this piece right on the edge of our folded card. Now it's always good to pick up your card and fold it, because have you ever glued it to the wrong side of the card? I have many times. So I'm going to put that there like this. And now we're going to open up our pad here and grab our little saying, "Life is better with you," which is from the Many Mates stamp set. That's a rubber stamp set. Our rubber stamps work great for more detailed stamps, and they're a cling stamp, so you can see how well this clings. Literally, sometimes I need to take my little tool, and especially when they're new, once you use them more, but you can see how stuck these are, and that's the big benefit of those cling stamps. The benefit of our photopolymer stamps is you can see through them. I'm going to stamp that there. Photopolymers tend to be a little less expensive, but the beauty of them is you can see, like on here now, when I want to line this up, I usually get my head in the camera, but being able to see where you're stamping is a big, big plus. And there we have that. Now I like to let that dry a little bit so that the ink is good and dry, because once it's good and dry, you can kind of sit and shake it like this. But I'm going to tie our bow. We're going to be adding a bow to this. So I'm going to tie our bow, and I'm going to show you how I do this with just a free tying. I take my bow and I pull this down so I have the loop coming around this way. I go around. It's like tying your shoe. I'm going to pull this through. Now you can pull it through and then adjust it. It's easier to just keep kind of adjusting it till you get the size bow you want. Once you have the bow the size you want, then you can kind of really tug on it to give it, that firmness so it doesn't untie. Now we're going to trim our ribbon here. And we're going to be placing that right here between the stem and the flowers. But I'm going to show you with our blendabilities, and everybody does blendabilities a little different. I usually start with a lighter color. Some people might start with a darker color. On the cards coming up in the darker colors, it'll be a little easier demonstrate that. So I take the lighter color and then I outline with the darker color. Now there's a fine tip and a brush tip, and so you can kind of pick which way you want to do it. Now on this one, once they dry, they kind of blend together, but on an upcoming card I will show you a little more how to blend those. So with the magic of television, I've pre-colored this one, and now I lost my bow. Here it is. We're going to take our bow, we're going to put a glue dot on it. If you've never used glue dots, those are the ultimate. And there we have our card. And so you can stamp a greeting inside. The part about Many Mates is it's got a inside saying or an outside saying. This one we've used the inside saying, life is better with you. So I'd use a little bigger one on the inside. You're just so fabulous, or happy birthday, depending on what you want this card used for. So now we'll go on to card number 2. Card number 2, we've got our number 2 on there. We're going to pull out our makings for the card. And on this card, we're going to glue our Just Jade cardstock right to the center of the card front. So we're going to go, again, like I said, the nice part about that multi-purpose glue. I used to not like multi-purpose glue. I am definitely a snail lover. I love my snail, but I have learned with my bifocals and stuff, this does give me a little more flexibility to move it around. We're coming out with a new product, and I don't have it yet, so I'm excited to get it. We have a new adhesive, a tape runner, and so I think we're calling it Stamp and Seal. Anyway, I'm excited to get mine and try it out and tell you how I like it. My customers know if I don't like it, I'll definitely tell you. But I think it's kind of in between Fast Fuse, which we used to sell and I loved, and our snails, so I think I'm going to love it. So now I'm going to stamp my image here, and we're going to start again with one of the little thanks from the Many Mates. Ink that up, and we're going to just stamp it on the lower part of our Whisper White here. And then we're going to take our flower, and with these I sometimes like to take my pad and stamp my stamp to make sure I get a good stamp. Now something that isn't going to show up in your catalog and I'm not sure exactly when it'll be available again, but we've had these in the past, is the Stampin' Mat, which works really good with your photopolymer stamps. But until then, we do have our Stamparatus mats, which I think can work almost like a replacement for that. With the photopolymer, it gives it just a little bit of flexibility, and so you get a little bit better stamping. If you ever have trouble not getting your whole stamped image stamped, you might want to invest in this Stampin' piercing mat when it comes back available. It's out of stock right now. I'm not going to color this one in because there's a better card coming up where I'm really going to show you how to use those Stampin' Blends. So you're going to color in your flowers, and then we're going to take this. And I have a lot of customers asking me how I get a perfect little flat nub on the top, because sometimes their knot comes from around the back and they end up with a bunchy knot. So I'm going to show you how to do this. It's just a little trick if you haven't ever heard it. So you're going to I always leave my ribbon on the spool because it ends up I use less. It's a little conserving, but I always put the spool on the right side of my project. Now for you it might be the left if you're, I don't know, some things I do right-handed and left-handed, so I don't know which way I'm doing it. But you're going to come around with this little tail, you're going to go down, And what I call it the 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock. So you can see the spool one is up here at 12 o'clock and my little tail is at 6 o'clock. I'm going to come down with my spool piece. I'm going to put my ribbon in and I'm only going to pull the spool piece. You're not going to pull both of them. You're just going to pull the one. Now once you get close to where you want it, you can tighten it up by posting both of them, or pulling both of them. Sorry for that. But this way you're just going to have this nice little knot on top, or smooth part instead of a knot on top. We're going to add our dimensionals because I love everything with dimension. So I'm going to throw my dimensionals on the back here. And if you have trouble getting those little things off, I have lots of years of experience, you can take our Pick-a tool and I'm going to flip this around and you can poke those little papers and pull them up like that. Some people find that helpful, especially if you're somebody that has, your nails done. Sometimes that's helpful. And we've got that card. Now you could leave it just like that, but we're going to add some of our little enamel dots just to give this a little bit more of a wow factor. And I'm going to take my little tool, I'm going to flip it back to my little spatula because this is a great little tool for picking up little self-adhesive embellishments. So we're going to grab those. Oops. Maybe. I put one here. I want a yellow one up over here. I get a green one, Just Jade. Now, some people are good at picking these up with their fingernails, but I'm not. So that's how I do that. And there we have card number 2. So now for card number 3, this is where I'm really going to demonstrate the coloring of your project. So we're going to start with, we're going to start by stamping our images. So on this one, I want to stamp the flowers. Stamp those on this scrap piece of paper. There we go. I'm going to stamp the little portion. I call this the bottom of the jar. This is, in the jar or the jar of flowers set, this can kind of become, you flip this over upside down and you can stamp this as your water on the card. Maybe I'll just demonstrate that quickly. So we're going to just stamp on our thing here. So that would be there. And then we would take maybe like our blue here. And we're going to go in and just stamp and give our jar some water. Now you might want to off stamp it and stamp the water in there like that. That's just one thing you could do using the back of that jar. So but now I'm going to stamp this jar like this. And you can cut it out or punch it out. If you're going to punch it out, you might want a little bigger piece of paper. I forgot to show you the jar punch when I was telling you what we're going to be using. But you can see here, like, how am I going to punch that? Well, I have another little trick. A Post-it note. So I'm going to take my little Post-it note. I'm going to stick my jar in my punch because sometimes it's nice to use up those little pieces of scrap paper that you have and punch it. And then we're going to just trim the top of that off, and that's going to be part of our card. So those are two of the stamped things we want. And I'm going to add my little piece of designer paper to the bottom. Since I don't have to, I have a edge to line this up on, and it's easier to do that on black sometimes. There we go. And I'm going to ink up our big jar. And we're going to stamp that just maybe about an inch from the edge and just catching the top of that designer paper down here. And see, the nice part about the photopolymer is you have that ability to see through. And then we're going to go up and we're going to stamp. Might have got that too close to the edge, but every card sometimes turns out different. We'll see when I get up here. Now we're going to put our flowers. I don't want to get my head in the camera. And usually I go right over the top to eyeball it. But there we have our flowers. And this is where we really are going to do some coloring, because we're going to color those all in. I'm going to start with this little piece to demonstrate this coloring technique. I'm going to take my light, I'm going to dry this a minute, my light one, and I'm going to color this rose with the light Ruco Rose Stampin' Blend. The thing I like about the Stampin' Blends over a marker is if you take a marker, a simple water-based marker, and you start doing this and then you go in, you get all that streaking. You can see it here now, but alcohol inks will dry and it's one solid color, so it really has a great finished look to it. And also with the two colors, you have the ability to blend, and I've done that with my Stampin' Rite markers, but you have to be really quick and you have to do small parts of the flower. So there we've got that. Now I'm going with my dark. The Stampin' Blends are sold in combo packs this year. Last year you could buy them individually, and there might be still some individual ones available, so when you're shopping, but if you don't have them, you really need both anyway, so it's a good idea just to grab them both right from the get-go. And I'm going to make the center of this rose a little darker, and I'm just kind of outlining the edges of the flowers like this. And you could use the fine point. One thing I want to say is when you're using this brush tip, do not press down hardly. You barely have to touch the paper, and with a really light touch, because what happens, especially if you let your grandchildren use them, you can see how the tip of this one is broken. It still works, but you can't do as fine a detail. But I'd rather let my grandchildren enjoy the crafting part of it and replace that with a new one at some point. In fact, I've already ordered it, but they like it, so I will now put that in their collection, and they'll have their own. I bought them their own Stampin' Rite markers at one time because I couldn't handle them killing the ends of my tips. So I take this lighter blend again with the finer tip, and I just kind of blend those two colors. Can you see how they're blending? And as this dries, it'll blend even more. So that's the coloring aspect and the blending of Stampin' Blends. So again, with the wonderful magic of videoing, I have pre-colored this because you don't need to watch me color all the flowers. So we're going to put, now where's my dimensionals? Do you all have this problem at home? I'm always setting things somewhere and then setting something on top. There they are. So I'm going to put these one in each alternating corner. If you put it in the center, then it tends to be kind of wobbly. If you put it in alternating corners, and I'm just going to stick that, bring it down on our little tablecloth here a little bit. And now I have cut out this, I colored this portion of this, and I've cut this part out, and we're going to just stick that in our vase. Now I'm going to put this up a little bit, And I'm going to put 2 dimensionals, one on top of each other, because I want that to stick up just a little bit further so it looks like it's overhanging the vase. So there we go, like that. Now I made this little bow with a fork, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So again, my ribbon's on the spool ribbon's on top, the tail is over here. And you're going to come over the top of your spool ribbon, and you're going to go through the middle spline of that fork and then with the spool ribbon, you're going to go over the ribbon on the fork. Then I flip it over and adjust it, and then you tie a knot in the back. Now these are unforgiving, so if it doesn't turn out the way you want it to, you have to start over, because there's no way to get this knot out once you have it done. And we're gonna snip our ends. I need to get the glue off my scissor, clean it with some. And then we're going to take our glue dot. We're going to just put that little bow right there. So you can see how easy that was to make that bow. Now we need a little greeting for so I'm going to take the Celebrate out of the Mini Mate stamp set. I'm going to stamp that on our little tag here. And then I'm going to just snip these little angles. That gives you a nice, just a little different something look, without a fancy punch or anything. And I'm going to just, oops, it's easier to put this on after I glue it to the front of my card. So I'm going to add some glue. Glue this to the front of our card. Get it eyeballed again. I love that I can move it a little, because you know, with fast views or my snails, sometimes it can't really, once it's there, it's there. And now I'm going to stick my little Celebrate on my card. And there we have card number 3. So let's move on to card number 4. Card number 4 is, we're going to be punching our jar out of the paper, stamping our jar on the paper. Now, if you don't have this stamp set and you're trying to substitute something, you can easily substitute things with our card kits. But if you can't resist this jar of flower stamp set, I highly recommend it. I love jar stamp sets. I don't know what there is about mason jars, but I love them anyway. So this one, I've stamped that. We're going to just punch it out. I love any stamp set that has a punch that goes with it. And we're going to glue this directly to our little piece of white. Going to glue this right in the middle of our paper here. And now I'm going to take the sunflower stamps. There's 4 different sets of flowers in this stamp, probably why it's called a flower for every season. And we're going to just stamp those on top of our jar. Hopefully I inked it good enough. I did. And we're going to stamp this little Celebrate right beside our jar like that. And we're going to go in with our flowers here. We're going to color our little sunflowers. Again, you can use your brush tip or your fine tip. Sometimes I notice the fine tip might be a little different shade than the brush tip, so sometimes that helps with blending even, to get. So then I'm taking my Mango Dark and I'm just going to go in. You can see how bad that tip is, but you can see it still works. And just give it a little more darkness. And then you're going to add some dimensionals, pop that up on your card like this, add your bow, and there's card number 4. Our cards today featured the Flower for Every Season Designer Series paper. This is a pack of 6-inch by 6-inch with 12 double-sided designs. You receive 4 of each of the designs for a total of 48 sheets. It is filled with flowers, some solid colors with subtle designs and stripes. Your kit may contain a different pattern piece than what was featured in the video. Since the paper packages are assorted, we try to keep them as similar as possible, and sometimes you may even prefer the alternative piece you receive. This can also happen with embellishments on occasion. If you need any Stampin' Up! Products to complete your kit or any other projects, if you live in Canada, you can place your order through Allison Sullivan at www.stampcrazywithallison.ca. If you are in the US, you can order through me at www.stampstodiefor.com. Thanks again for purchasing the June Take and Make kit. Happy stamping!